Hi and welcome. I'm Jacquie Gouveia, and in this painting video I'm going to show you how I painted this painting from start to finish. For this video and for this painting, I'm going to show you a photograph that I used for inspiration. We're going to keep things really simple, we're going to have lots of fun, and I hope you learn all kinds of new stuff. Thanks so much. So before we get started, I just want to talk about the tools that I like to use when I paint. Obviously, I have my easel. I've had this easel for several years, and it's nice and sturdy. But when you get started, you can use anything. This happens to be a little bit more expensive easel, but you can buy things that are just tabletop if you're getting started. You can buy things right at Michael's that aren't that expensive. My canvas. I tend to like a canvas that has a lot of texture on it. It's a heavier weight cotton canvas, and it's wrapped, it's gallery wrapped. It's about 1.5 inches thick because I paint the sides. That way people don't have to frame it if they don't want to. Because I use acrylics, I always have a spray bottle on hand. The room that I'm in now tends to be dry, so my paints dry quickly. And you have to kind of keep your environment in mind. If you're painting on a rather muggy day, your paints are it's gonna take longer for them to dry because they're gonna be a little bit soupier. So when if I'm painting in a drier environment, this spray bottle comes in handy because I can keep my paints wet and I can control the consistency of them. I also use two types of gessos when I paint. I use a clear gesso, which is clear. It doesn't really affect the color at all, but it helps me to kind of get some fluidity with the paint. And the clear gesso also has a small, tiny grittiness to it. Again, it gives it a texture that I like to work with. The other gesso that I work with is white gesso. I tend to use gesso as my white. I do use a titanium white, but especially when I'm working on big paintings, I use gesso as my white because it gives me that ability to really mix up big spots of paint. So that way when I'm working on a large canvas, I can move the paint around. So I like to use gesso as my white. You know, it's acrylic base, it mixes well with my acrylic paints. So my paints themselves, my favorite brand is M. Graham. M. Graham makes both acrylic and oils. It's more of probably a pricier acrylic paint, but because I sell my paintings, I like to have quality products. And M. Graham, their colors are gorgeous. They're really vibrant, they're really rich, and they're great to work with. My palette, my palette is basically, I think it used to be in a picture frame at one point. It's just a piece of plexiglass. And I can clean it really easy. I spray it down, I can wash it off. I keep my palette nice and clean. And when you see how I mix paintings, I only mix one color at a time. I don't have a bunch of different colors. So I mix the color that I'm going to work with, I use it, and I clean my palette off. So I like to keep my palette nice and clean because it helps me keep my colors nice and fresh. I also use palette knives. So I use the palette knives to both mix paint and also apply paint on my canvas. And I'm going to show you that in the video later, how I actually apply some paint on my canvas with a palette knife. And then last but not least, my brushes. So I buy really cheap brushes. I know when you can go out and you can spend a ton of money on brushes. I used to do that, and it just didn't make sense for me anymore with the way I paint. So I buy these brushes at like a Lowe's or a Michael's. They're super cheap. They're like maybe $1. And I really work my brushes hard. As you can see, this little stubby brush used to look something like this. But I like using both of these brushes because this brush is really soft. It gives me one sort of technique that I like to use, the way I apply the paint. And this brush that's really gotten worn down and stubby helps me really kind of scrub in areas if I want to lighten things up, if I want to kind of pull some of the paint off. You know, I get to use these kinds of brushes. This will wear down to a point where I really can't use it anymore, so I throw it out. But again, I use really, really cheap brushes. Hi, so before we get started, let's talk about the colors that we're gonna use in this painting. So one of the colors is ultramarine blue. This is my absolute favorite blue. It is what I would consider like a true Crayola crayon kind of blue. It's very rich, it's very versatile, and it's really a beautiful, beautiful color to work with. I'm going to keep on hand cobalt blue. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it just yet, but I'll have it on hand and we'll see if we use it. Cobalt blue is a little bit lighter and airier, and I can call it icier than the ultramarine, where ultramarine is a little bit richer. This is a little bit lighter. Those are your cool colors. Our underpainting is going to be a permanent rose, and for whatever reason, I tend to like this Winsor Newton Galleria permanent rose color. It works nicely. We're gonna use this for our underpainting, so we have nice warm undertones. We are also going to be using cadmium orange. This is a color that I use a lot. This color is great to mix with other colors, to make grays, to make green, grayish greens. So cadmium orange is another color that we're going to use. It also is a color that I tend to use right out of the tube, so we'll probably use that at the very end. Olive green is another color that I'm going to use. This color is so gorgeous. It's so earthy. We're going to use it to make up our sand and beige colors. It's a beautiful color to work with. It's really rich. It's also really dark. So when I want to bring in some really dark tones, the olive green is what I use. And then optionally, I'm going to have sap green. You don't need to have it if you don't want to, but I'm going to use it, a little bit of it at the very end for some final touches. Sap green is compared to olive green, sap green is more of a green color, where olive green kind of starts going towards the browns. So sap green is a really nice green, and it works well with adding yellows and stuff to make a brighter green. So we will also be using sap green. All right, let's get started. All right, so for this video, this painting, let's first talk about the photo that I use for my inspiration for it. So this photograph was a postcard that one of my sisters sent me of my two nieces on a beach down in Cape Cod. So when I first get the postcard, I was like, oh, aren't my nieces just so adorable? That was the first thing I thought. And then I immediately thought, wow, this would make such a great abstract painting. Because what I really got to notice was the coloring of the beach, but also how the color of my niece Kaylee's sweater was a dark tan, and my niece Sarah's jacket was like a periwinkle blue. And I loved how the jacket had some really dark colors in it and then some light colors in it. So the shadow created these nice dark blues, and the sun coming through her shoulder created a nice light blue. So from this photo, I said this is going to be a really great inspiration piece to do a really pretty coastal type abstract landscape painting. And I've done several versions of it, and they've come out really nice. I've actually sold most of the paintings that I've done of these. So this is going to be the inspiration for this painting, and we're going to just use it, and we'll take some elements out of it like I talked about. We're going to change up the composition a little bit, but other than that, it's going to be what gets us inspired, and it's going to be what we kind of draw out of to do this painting. Cool, thanks. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put a little warm underpainting on this. So I'm going to use my permanent rose, and we're just going to mix up. We're going to take some permanent rose, add a little bit of clear gesso, take my spray bottle, get a little wet. And I'm just going to kind of go in and lay on the paint. I'm not going to worry about covering every inch. I just want to get some color on here, just some of this nice pink undertones. Just move it around. Again, I'm just going to leave certain areas completely white, whatever. If the canvas picks it up, great. If it doesn't, I'm just going to leave it as is. So that's our underpainting. It's going to dry. Today's nice dry day, so it's going to dry real quickly. So we can move on to the next thing. Thanks. All right, so now that we have the underpainting on here, we got a nice pretty pink color. We're going to start laying out the composition. So in this painting, I'm going to do a really, really high horizon line. And what that means is that the whole bottom of this painting is going to be the sand color that we're gonna lay on here. So like I said, I'm going to have a really high horizon line. We're going to have just a strip of the sky, and everything else is going to be the sand color. Now, because we're going to have such a big mass of kind of a beige color, we want to make sure that we are breaking up that color with different values, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix up a lighter version of the sand color and just start laying that on, just so I can, define the horizon line and get some color happening down here in this sand area, okay? So I'm going to take some white gesso, and we're going to use a little bit of the cadmium orange. And some of the olive green. And I want, like I said, I want this layer to be on the lighter side. So we're going to start with a lighter beige, put that on, and then we're going to kind of build up the values to be darker. But this first pass will be a lighter version. Add a little clear gesso. I'm actually going to use the same brush that the pink is on, because I don't mind if the pink blends in a little bit, because it just gives it more of a warmer tone. And I'm just going to kind of drag it across the top. That's going to define where our horizon line is going to be. And then I'm just going to go in and I'm going to start laying in some color right over that pink. And again, if some of the pink shows through, that's great, because it's such a pretty color. Okay, so here we've gotten to the point where we've defined our basic composition. It's just going to be a strip of sky at the top. get the horizon line really high. We're laying in some color at the bottom here. And like I said, we started off with a nice light version of this. And now our next layer is we're going to start kind of darkening up these values. Okay, so this is going to dry pretty quickly. I'm going to take the paint that I still have on my palette, and I'm just going to move on and start mixing up a batch or adding some more value to it to get it darker. And then we're going to just keep painting. So we're building up these layers. We're starting with a light color and we're building it up, adding dark as we go. Okay. So for the next layer, again, I have paint on my palette, and we're going to just start darkening up this palette color that we already have. So I'm just adding both of the olive green and the cadmium orange, mixing it in. And we can see there's some nice darker tones. And it's very subtle, but we're going to work on just building this up. So it's going to start off subtly, but we're going to keep building and adding, building and adding. And I can kind of define where, by the way I'm brushing this on, I can kind of define where I want that darker color to be and where I want to leave the lighter color, because I do want, overall, I do want the values to be different. I want some light areas and I want some dark areas, and then we're going to get darker and darker and darker. Okay, so I'm going to add some more olive green and cadmium orange together. And this time I'm going to lay it on with my palette knife, and I'm just going to, I put some paint right on the back of my palette knife, nice and flat, and I'm just going to start laying it in, letting the texture of the canvas kind of pick it up. And I'm, kind of defining where I want this dark color to be, where I want the dark, really dark areas to be. Now we're building up some even darker colors. And I can go in with my brush, if I want to kind of soften some stuff, soften some areas. And I can soften that a little bit. All right. So take a step back, kind of take a look at it, see where we're at, and I can see, oh, we got some really nice pink tones still kind of peeking through here and some other areas. I'm absolutely loving that. I think that makes a nice dimension. It makes some nice depth. But one of the things I want to kind of switch over to now is start working on the sky area, because I do want the sky area to have a nice blue sky, light blue sky. And while this is all kind of drying, I can flip over and work on this sky part and start laying in some nice blues. So I'm gonna clean off my palette since I'm completely changing colors. I'm going to clean off my palette so I have a nice clean palette to work from. I'm going to make sure I clean off my palette knife. And then I'm just going to mix up a small batch of some white and some ultramarine blue. And I'll add just a touch of the clear gesso. Oh, this blue is so beautiful. I absolutely love this blue. So I'm actually going to take a bunch of the paint. Again, I'm going to scoop it up, scrape it up with my palette knife. And then I'm going to lay it on the canvas with my palette knife. Since it's a small area, it's nice to just put it on, drag it across. Scrape it on. I already know that it's on the dark side, which is fine, because I can always add white to lighten it up. All right. So with the paint that I still have on my palette, I'm just going to add a little bit more white. And this time I'm just going to take a really small brush, mix it together. So I used a whole different brush now. This is a completely clean brush that I want to use for my blues. And I'm just going to lightly go over the blue that's there. You know, I'm just kind of dragging the paint sometimes across, sometimes up and down, just to kind of give it a variety of texture. Because your brush strokes are important too, because your brush strokes can kind of define the direction the paint is going. You know, and especially when you're doing areas like water, if you have your brush strokes going across, it gives that illusion of water. Because, you know, typically if you look at the ocean, if you look at a pond, water goes across. So when you use your brush strokes going across, it gives that illusion of the water. So the brush strokes are important. You know, it's something just to keep in mind. I like to vary it up because it gives it a nice texture. So I'm going to take some more of this lighter blue and again add it on with my palette knife very lightly. I'm going to leave some areas kind of on the darker side, and then I'll add this on. So there's some light areas, there's some dark areas, and there's some pink showing through. So I'm going to take a step back, take a look at, see where I'm at. You know, taking a step back, looking at your work, getting a feel for the whole picture is really important too, because it helps you kind of really see everything that's going on. So if I take a step back, now I can start making some new decisions. Okay, well, what do I want to work on next? Where do I want to go? Do I want to darken areas? Do I want to lighten areas? Do I want to add more blue to the sky? So it just kind of helps you take a look, take a breath, figure out where am I at? What do I need to do next? And again, the whole process is building up those layers. All right, so we're just building up the layers and adding values. And then at the very end, we add the very final paint that's going to lay on top. But now we're still in the process of building up those layers. All right, so let's move on to the next layer. All right, so we're taking a step back. We're taking a look at where we're at. And so I already know, I mean, obviously we need to build up the layers on this bottom part here. You know, the paint is still very thin. It's nice and dry, so we can move on. And I'm going to mix up some more of the darker tones. I think I'm going to go try to get in between this light color that's here and the dark. So I have more of a mid-tone that we're kind of throwing on in for the bulk of this. So let's mix up some more color. And again, it's the white gesso. with some cadmium orange to make it warm, some olive green, and I'm going to put just a tiny touch of the permanent rose. It came out a little bit more than I wanted. It's all right, I'll scrape some off. Let's mix that up, see what we get. Ooh, that's a pretty color. So if you're not sure where your value is in terms of what you want it to be, you can just take some from your palette knife, hold it up to your painting, and you can kind of see, is it too light? Is it too dark? And you know, it is kind of on the light side compared to what I'm going for. You know, if I just kind of scrub some on, I can see really how light it is. It's, you know, it's a very, very pretty color. So I can just kind of lay some on. But I do want it to be darker. So I'm going to add some more of the olive green, because that's really the dark rich tones in there. Now we're getting it to be more of a medium value, which is really nice. So again, I'm just kind of laying it on with my palette knife, and I'm kind of taking this medium tone to kind of create like a path through here, kind of swooping down into this area. I'm just going to add a little bit more color. Lay it on. It's getting that really, really nice mocha tone going to it. Can also lay some on with a soft brush. Really pretty color. You know, I have this section down here that happens to be showing some pink through. I'm going to add some of the beige color to it, but I'm going to leave some of that pink shining through because it's such a pretty combination there. You know, and we know that there are beaches out there that have pink sands, right? So, hey, we can leave that there. We're the boss. We're the boss of the painting. So we get to decide what we want on it, what we don't want on it. I'm going to add with my palette knife. Just drag it across up here. So I'm going to take a step back, you know, and all I'm doing, again, I'm just kind of taking in information, take a step back, figure out where do I want to go from here. I kind of have some nice lights in there. I can see some nice lights going on in there. I can see some pinks coming through. But I do want a little bit more of that dark value. So this value right here is kind of by itself up in this corner. So to kind of balance off the painting, I think I'd like to put a little bit of it down here because it just kind of gives it a balance. Now I know that in this area, because of the composition and what I'm going for, and this area is where we're going to put in the blues from my niece Sarah's shirt or her jacket. So I know that over here I'm going to have some really dark tones, but it's going to be a whole different value. So I want to take this value, this really dark color, and kind of add it in down in this corner here. So there's a nice balance between what's happening over here, what's happening down here. So I still have paint on my palette. All I'm going to do is I'm going to just keep mixing up some of the olive green and the cadmium orange. get that really dark, rich color built up again. And to balance it, you don't really need a lot. You know, all I'm doing is I'm just making a note that what's happening over here, value-wise, I want it to kind of be happening down here too. And it's just basically a decision that I'm making as I go to get cohesiveness between everything that's happening all throughout here, right? So we got the medium values happening, a dark, lighter, but I don't want the dark to be all by itself, basically. So since I still have some darks, I can kind of go back in and lay right over the dark that I have. And this now, because the values aren't exact, letting the canvas pick it up, because the values aren't exact, it really creates a nice layering effect of the original tone that I created and now this new value, and it's kind of laying right on top of that, which gives that, to me, it gives that some dimension. So it gives it some sort of, not 3D obviously, but it gives the illusion that there's layers there, right? Because there's layers in the sand, there's layers and layers and layers. So this is giving that illusion too of, okay, this part lays over this part. So this part is in the front. This is going to come forward. These parts are kind of pushing back. So it just gives it that really nice illusion of a layering effect. All right. So I still have some lighter color on here. I'm just mixing up whatever I have left on my palette. I'm just kind of mixing that up. It's creating a really, really pretty warm middle tone. Just going to take a quick step back and figure out where I want to lay this down. And I think I'm going to lay it right in here, just really lightly. Laying it on top of everything. And again, you can see up in this corner how there's some pink hues coming through. And I don't want to cover that up completely because I really like what's happening there. All right. So again, take a step back and let's take a look and see where we're at. So personally, I'm really loving how everything is laid out on the bottom here. It's got built up layers. We have some pinks coming through, some of the lighter sand. We have some of the medium colors. And again, they're medium, but they're not all exactly the same, which is what I like to kind of build those layers up. And then we have the dark colors flowing through. We have some flowing through up here. And then to kind of balance it off, we have some flowing in down over in this area. All right. So we'll take another step back, kind of take a look at it, take a beat, figure out what's next. All right. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to kind of pay some attention to the sky area. I'm still feeling like there's maybe a little bit too dark in some spots. It's not bad, but I just want to kind of vary it up a little bit. I like how the lighter color is just kind of it's laying on the top, but I think I just want to just do a small adjustment to it. Again, it's just personal preference. It's, you know, it's such a tiny area of the painting. It just kind of breaks up the top half. It doesn't have a ton of significance, but then again, because it's part of the painting, it does have significance. So I just want to kind of lighten it up a little bit. And I think I'm going to use the cobalt blue. So like I had said in the beginning, I was going to have the cobalt blue on hand Didn't know if I was going to use it or not. Now I know I am going to use it. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the gesso, take some cobalt blue, mix that up. Again, my palette has been cleaned, so there's nothing else on here except a little spot of pink that if it stays wet, I'm going to use in a little while. But in any case, so I just have this very light cobalt blue mixture going on. And again, I'm just going to kind of lay it right on top using my palette knife. Just really light. And this is because it's kind of a cooler blue than the ultramarine, and it's a lighter value. Just going to kind of sit right on top. All right, I'm going to take like a nice bead of it on my palette knife, and I'm just going to kind of drag it across just to kind of define maybe like that there's a water out there or something. And then I'm just laying it on, nice and easy. Okay. So yeah, so that's basically it. Right now I'm going to leave the sky alone. I like how it has variation of values up there. Again, like the bottom, it's kind of following the same theme. It's got some dark blues, it's got some pink showing through, medium blues, and now with this cobalt blue, it has a nice little light color. One of the other things that I tend to like to do is with this blues, because blues happen to be my favorite color, and this area down here is so neutral, which I know we're going to make some changes, but it's nice to take some of this blue mixture that I just made up and add it to the bottom, but I'm just going to do it really light. So again, I'm going to put some paint at the very bottom of my palette knife. It's going to be nice and flat, and I'm just going to lightly apply it to the canvas. And I just am letting the canvas, the textures of the canvas, pick up where that blue falls. I'm not forcing it. I'm not pressing hard at all. I'm just letting the canvas kind of pick up that blue. So again, in terms of balancing out the colors, I have some blue up here. Now I have that same mixture just lightly applied to the bottom. And I already know, just because of the way I am, I want to take the same kind of mixture and value and just really slightly add it over here. So now we have this really pretty mixture of that dark brown, that dark beige, with some of that light blue laying right on top of it. Again, the texture of the canvas is just picking it up. I'm just lightly laying it on. Wherever the canvas picks it up, that's where it's going to stay. And it works out really nice. It's just a nice spot of color, really pretty, very subtle, but it adds some dimension and it adds some interest to the overall painting. All right. Okay, so the next layer that we're going to work on is we are going to start laying in the coloring from Sarah's coat. So if you remember, sorry, I'm going out of the frame. I'm back. So if you remember, when we looked at the photo of her coat, there was the dark periwinkle and the light periwinkle, right? So we can go as strong as doing like really dark purple and laying it on there. and a light purple. But we'll mix up some paint. We'll see what we come up with for a value. But the goal of it is that we're in this area. We're gonna lay down a dark purplish periwinkle color, and then we're gonna lighten it and we're gonna lay that over it. So when we did the sand color, the beige color, we went in the opposite direction. We started off with light beige and we worked and built up the values to the dark. This way, we're going to go in the opposite direction. So I want to lay down a spot of like a dark purple, and then I'm going to lighten it up, and I'm going to lay that on top of the dark purple. Okay, so we're just going to kind of use this. Just use her coat as a guide, and we're just going to make basically some spots of color just to add some different values, just to add some interest. And then once we do that, we'll take a step back, figure out where we're at. But let's start mixing up some paint for there. All right, so before I mix up some new paint, I'm going to clean off my palette. Squirt it down. Clean off my palette knife. And for this coloring, for this color, I am going to mix some ultramarine blue with some permanent rose. Now I happen to have some permanent rose left on my palette, which looks like it's still wet. I can use some of it. Not enough, but that's okay. I got it right here. I'm not going to add it right to my mixture because any of the red colors like permanent rose or cadmium reds, they're really strong. So I like to add any sort of red bit by bit so I can control better what it is I'm trying to go for, because I know if I add too much, it's hard to kind of pull back into the blue. All right, so this looks like a nice mixture of a purple. I just don't think I have enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more blue. Take some permanent rose. Again, I'm just going to keep mixing it up. And I want enough paint so when I scoop it up and lay it on the canvas, it just kind of floats on top. All right, so I think that's enough. We'll just go for it. So I'm going to take a nice big bead of it, again, taking it right onto my palette knife. Got a nice bead kind of sitting on the edge here. And I'm just going to lightly lay it right across. And boy, is that beautiful. It just lays on top. It's so dark, so rich. And I'm going to kind of move it around. I don't want it to be just a solid blob. I'm going to kind of do what I did with the cobalt mixture. Add touches of it here and there. Add touches of it here and there. And then I'm going to add to the paint that's on my palette. I'm adding a little bit of white. And I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to take this same, now that I've added white, I'm going to do the same thing. So this is kind of going on the, down the line of a nice lilac color. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just taking a bead of the paint mixture, and I'm going to just drag it right over that dark color. So the two together represent, from Sarah's coat, the part of her coat that was in the shade and the part of her coat that was in the sun. And obviously this isn't a coat, but I use that photo just as some inspiration. When I saw her coat and how the two colors together, the dark and the light, just were so pretty on sitting on that sand color, I knew that I just had to paint that. I just had to do it. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. Again, just let the canvas pick it up. Add it in different spots. I think I'm going to add some of this lilac over in this corner here, just to break this area up, create some balance. I'm going to take a step back. Let's take a look at where we're at. Oh, that really looks pretty. I love how, again, that pink undertone, almost now that there's the beige on top of it, the pink undertones almost become a little bit of a, oh great, now I don't, like a peach color. I thought I was going to lose my words. So it's kind of like becoming more of a peach color, because now that the beige is sitting on it, you know, you still see some pinks, but down in here, it's almost like a peachy, really pretty. And then now that we have this beautiful spot of this dark, almost purple, dark blue and lilac sitting on top of that with a pink undertone, I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. And this is when, you know, I get so excited, because no matter how long I've been painting, sometimes you stop painting, you're putting paint on canvas, and things start to evolve, and they just blow your mind. They just get you so excited because, you know, yeah, you formulate things in your head, you visualize things, but until you actually do it and you actually see the effect, you know, it's just such a great feeling to see, oh wow, look at how this turned more peachy just because the beige is here now with the lilac here. You know, you can see that it's very pink up in this corner, but when you get down here, it feels a little bit more peachy. So I just get so excited when things like this happen and I witness it and I created it, but it's like, oh my God, this is happening all by itself. These colors are playing with each other, and it's just a really, really great combination. So we're going to move on now to our final touches. Like I said, I'm really loving the way the majority of the paint, the layout of the painting is. We've got the composition going. We got the sand area that we have enough layers there that are playing against each other, putting on this really dark purple, and the lilac has just brought it to life. I really think it has brought it so much to life. It just laying on top there. So we're just going to do some very final touches, and then we're going to have a great painting. Cool. All right, so before we put on the final touches, there's one thing I do want to share. It's kind of like a little secret that I have, or maybe it's not a secret. I'm sure a lot of artists do this. But I actually have some paint still kind of mixed up on my palette. And before we do final touches, I want to clean off my palette. But one of the things that I do tend to do is, if there's still a lot of paint on my palette and it's, you know, it's wet enough to work with, this is getting kind of dry, but this is just to kind of share with you some type of technique. I always have a canvas by my side. And as you can see, this canvas has just all kinds of stuff on it. And this is what I kind of use to clean off my palette knife. Like I said, if I have stuff on my palette and there's still a lot of paint, you know, I throw it on here. So this ends up becoming the underpainting for a painting I'm going to do in the future. You know, and I like working this way because I get some paint on here, and then when I go to actually use this canvas to make a painting, then I get some information on here already. Okay, instead of starting with a white canvas, which I like to do, like just how we started this one. But that's just a little technique that I have. I just, you know, throw color on here just to kind of clean it off. So for final touches, let's clean the palette. Get it nice and clean. Clean my palette knife. And I'm going to mix up a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of white and my sap green. So this is, if you don't have sap green, you know, you can always make up a nice green with yellows, any sort of yellow in ultramarine blue or cobalt blue. You can play around, create some nice greens. I just wanted just a light green that I'm going to put along the horizon line. So it's just going to kind of have the illusion that there are some nice green trees back there. So again, I'm going to use my palette knife. I'm just going to put a bead of paint along the edge. And I'm just going to drag it across up here, wherever it falls. I'm not going to force it. I just want to get like just a touch of green, like I said, just to kind of create the illusion that there's maybe a tree line way in the distance. And then I'm also going to take one of the things I always like to do. I'm going to take my cadmium orange and I'm going to basically draw on the canvas right out of the tube, just again, right along that horizon line. Just to give it some sort of marker that says, hey, there's something going on in the distance. You know, besides everything that's happening in here, something is going on in the distance. So now that I have the green up here, I have the orange laid up here, I can see that I do want to add just a touch more green around that orange. And then since there's just a little bit of green up here, just to keep my overall painting a little balanced, I'm just going to add a little tiny green, just really slight. Kind of made a nice spot on my palette where it's quite wet. I'm just going to lay that right in here just to add some of that green throughout the painting. All right. And then last but not least, I'm going to take some of my olive green, which is really a dark, rich green. I'm going to take that bead, once again, create a bead on my palette knife. And again, I'm just adding some variation and some interest right up at the horizon line. And then I like to add maybe the dark around the edges a little bit, just so there's nice dark color going on. All right, so let's take a step back and take a look at what we have here. So again, with this painting, we went with a high horizon line, very simple composition. We just have a sky area, we have this whole sand area, but the focus was kind of to get the sand area worked out, get the layers built up, get a variation and values within the sand itself, and then we built all that up to kind of make a bed for this lilac and purple color. So this deep purple with the lighter purple, lighter lilac, periwinkle, whatever you want to call it. So this is almost, this color spot to me is almost like the star. So we built up that nice neutral bed, we laid it on there, and then our final touches, we just added some interest, some variation way in the horizon line. So we kind of saying, oh, there's something going on way back in the distance. But your eye goes right here. That's where we, built this nice neutral bed up to give this the star. So I think we did a great job, and I hope you learned some great things and learned something new today. Don't forget, sign it, always sign it, spray it, hang it up, and enjoy it. Thanks so much. Just a couple of final comments on how I finish my paintings. I do a light spray. Once the painting is dry, I do a light spray. I use this Grumbacher. I'm not even sure if that's how you pronounce it, but let's go with it. And it's just a matte final varnish. So it helps protect the colors. It helps protect it from dust. I just do, like I said, it's just a light spray that I coat the whole painting with. A couple of other things. Because I always use gallery wrapped canvas, I always paint the sides a solid color, which is really nice because this gets the buyer so they don't have to frame it if they don't want to. A lot of my paintings that are hanging around the house are finished off like this. I also wire the back, and I tend to go like about a quarter of the way down from the top. And then I usually sign my name, put my name on the back, the year that I completed the painting, and the title of the painting. And that's it. That's how I finish off my painting. Thanks.